Hello, I'm Tim from cablesfarm.co.uk, and I'm going to start a project on a pair of Wogden dueling pistols. I've got a set of parts and I'm going to reconstruct them, the pair of pistols, and I hope a case for them. Now, my project is really centred around the parts that I've got, but also around an excellent book written by John O'Sullivan and DeWitt Bailey called Robert Wogden, and it's basically an incredibly comprehensive book on the output of Robert Wogden and of his successor John Barton, who he worked in partnership with for a while. So we're going to look at that, the book, and we're going to look at the parts in this video, and then we'll look at what preparations I've made for going ahead with the construction of it, and then in subsequent videos we'll look at making various bits of it. Now, to begin with, it's worth saying that Robert Wogden was born in 1734. He entered business really in the 1760s, having been apprenticed to a man called Newton in Grantham. Now, Grantham was a remarkable place in terms of gun making. It produced not only Wogden, who was a very famous London gun maker of the middle and latter part of the 18th century, it also produced John Twigg, who was similarly a great London gun maker over the same period, and it produced, Grantham produced the Manton brothers, Joseph and John. So that was four of the top London gun makers, all came from Grantham, and presumably that was down to the existence of Newton, for whom they were all apprenticed one way or another. And so it's quite a remarkable place, Grantham, in terms of gun making. So we'll now move over to looking at the book and looking at the inspiration I got from the book, looking at the parts I've got with which to make my reconstruction, and the drawings I've done. So we've had our very brief introduction to Robert Wogden. Now let's just set his work and life in the context of the firearms of the period. So at the beginning of the period, I mean, a typical high quality firearm might be something like that, a pistol, a holster pistol, this is by Barber, who was a very well known maker. It's silver hallmarked for 1760, and it's a very nice little pistol. That would have been carried by a gentleman in a holster, and it's not what you would call essentially a dueling pistol. It would be a general purpose pistol. So that would have been the sort of thing when he first came onto the scene that was normal. This butt and the ears here, so forth, would be typical of what he first started to make. He might also he'd have made some little pocket pistols like this. That's another common sort of pistol from that age, carried around himself, I mean, as protection, carry it in an overcoat pocket, or this sort of thing. This is a bit later, but this would have been a sort of semi-military thing carried by an officer in the army, possibly. So those pistols would have been the sort of thing that when he first came into the business he would have been making. So that's that. Let's have a look now at John O'Sullivan's and DeWitt Bailey's book. Robert Wogden, London gunmaker, 1764 to 1819, which were the dates he was working, and it's published by Bonhams, the auctioneers. So let's just have a quick look. This is an incredible book, to be honest. It's very detailed. One of the things about Wogden was that he became famous for his dueling pistols, and particularly he was known for their lethality, so he was called Wogden, the bringer of death. And one of the things that he did was to tackle the problem of the fact that pistols, when you shoot them, tend to shoot high. So if I take a pistol, I have to do it, since I'm right-handed, have to do it the other way. When you look at a pistol like that, when you're sighting along the barrel, it's quite obvious that you're holding the pistol below the height of the barrel. And if you think about the reaction when the ball comes out of the end of the barrel, there's a reaction on the gun. It's above the mass of your hand, so there will be a tendency to kick the barrel up. And Wogden, what Wogden did was to counter this in his dueling pistol, since it's rather important that you don't miss. He bored the barrels of his pistols in a slight curve, so they pointed downwards. In fact, he got his physics wrong, and it doesn't work. But anyway, so here's the book, and they go into it. John O'Sullivan got a lot of people to X-ray the barrels and to look to see where the bore was, and did a lot of work on it, and proved that A, all of his dueling pistol barrels had a bent bore, and B, showed that actually it didn't help matters at all. But that's all in the book. And my main interest in the book is that it has a lot of detail about various aspects of the making of the gun. I mean, quite technical detail. So he will go into what the tumbler looked like, what the dimensions of the typical stock were, and so on. A lot of stuff. What decoration there was on it, what engraving it had, going on and on, what proof marks you could find on the bottom of the barrel, what shape the internal bits were. I mean, just endless detail in great depth. It's a really brilliant book, really lovely. So that was his book. I mean, even what checkering there was on the stocks. So, and what the cases were like, what sort of engraving the locks had on them, how you did your signature on the locks, the cases, what was in the cases. An incredibly comprehensive book. If you're interested in dueling pistols, I can thoroughly recommend it. So, what I did when I came to this, well, I'll show you. I bought a long time ago a set of parts from an old chap who'd had them for donkey's years. So I got 2 barrels. Main thing I got was 2 barrels and 2 locks and 2 set triggers and some other bits, which a false breech, 1 false breech, and a couple of bits of rib in case I wanted to make them into half stocked guns. So that's what I got, and I've got a few other bits that might or might not be useful. This didn't have any cocks with it, so I've got some castings which are not quite right. I'll try and get the right ones. And I've got a couple of frizz and springs. Somewhere along the line I'll find something that works. So a couple of frizz and springs there. So these things were made, these things, I was sold them initially, tried to sell them as if they were made by Wogden and never been and never been finished. I think that's highly improbable. I think more likely they were made by a very good gunsmith in the latter part of the 19th or earlier 20th century, and that person was the sort of person, the standard of workmanship, given that they're kind of one up and filed up, would have been the sort of person who probably worked for a major gun makers like Purdy's or somebody. So there's my little set of parts, which I'm going to turn into a pair of pistols. So I've got to get some cocks, I've got to get trigger guards, I've got to get butt plates, I've got to get the barrel loops as well. So I've got a few things to do there. So that's that. So let's have a look at where we've got to then. So what I did next was to look through this splendid book and find there's a whole lot of detailed descriptions of individual pairs of guns and guns with beautiful photographs of them. They went through, I can't remember how many there are, but there are about 20 or 30 different duelling pistols in here. And I went through until I found one that I liked the look of, that was reasonably compatible with the bits I've got, which is the one on page 161. And so that's, I wanted a silver mounted pistol because although I'm not particularly fussed about it being very elaborate, I figured that if I've got to make the barrel hoops and the trigger guard, it will actually be easier to make them in silver. I can file them up easier, I can solder them together without it showing. So I thought that might be quite nice to have a silver mounted one. So page 161 is one which is in a private collection, hallmarked for 1787, overall length 15 1/8 inch, otherwise mostly standard, and so that was what I decided I would do. So in order to make this, first of all, I want to make the stock. So the first thing to do is to take this photograph in the book and photograph it, which I did. So let's move over to the real world now. So here's my photograph. I scaled it up, fiddling around with the software on the computer. So I've scaled it up to full size. I couldn't print it out as A3 because I've only got an A4 printer, so I've done it in 2 sheets and stuck them together. So there's my working diagram, and from that I made, which you can't see at the moment, I cut out a profile of the woodwork and transferred that to a drawing. So this is my master drawing for the stock. So what we've got here is a section in a profile of the lock. And what I've done is to take that, I've taken the profile from the photograph because there's a good profile. I mean, that comes out as a good profile. Then what I've done is to take my duelling pistol. I've got a Hutchinson which is very similar to the duelling pistols that Wogden was making. It's a bit different in the butt, but otherwise it's very similar. The same length of barrel, same external dimensions of the barrel, and so I took this and used this to work out how thick the wood needs to be in various places in order to accommodate the locks and so forth. It'll be slightly different in the stock, but then the dimensions of that are in the book. So I've taken that, and that's enabled me to draw a profile, to draw a number of sections through the barrel, to draw a top view of the barrel, of the woodwork, and a top view of the woodwork, and where the barrel groove has got to be let in. And so what I'm going to do now, in the next video, I will transfer these dimensions to one of my stock blanks. I've got a number of stock blanks which I got from Bonham's, which are nice pieces of very, very, very well seasoned walnut, which are just perfect for making a dueling pistol stock out of. So I shall be making them two stocks out of a couple of pieces I've got. I couldn't quite get two out of one, unfortunately, so I'll be making that. So the next job I'll do is to mark out all this stuff. First of all, I'll make a blank that's the right size. Then I'll inlet the barrel, and then I can cut the profile and then thin the blank down to the right thicknesses, and then all that will be done in the square. And then once I've got that sorted out in the square, I'll move into working in the round and using a rasp and files to get it to the right shape. So thank you very much. You can see more gun stuff on cablesfarm.co.uk, and I will hopefully be back in the next couple of weeks with what I've done to the stocks. Thank you very much.